I think it's important to ask for help when needed. Reach out to people you think, and that's where I would come into networking. Find people who can help you out.
One big thing I get from immigrants when I talk to them is the fact that you're alone or you don't know anyone.
To make friends and network, you have to go out there and do that. I would always encourage people who are coming from a different country to.
Welcome back to Unfiltered with Poch People. Today I'm chatting with Nida Ateeq, engineer, marketer, demand gen expert, immigrant entrepreneur. She runs a business called Anagar Media, and she's fantastic at what she does. Honestly, people, she is. But they say immigrating is hard. But then you immigrate and then you start a business. So I'm just trying to understand. For most immigrants, they say, I come and I want to go get a job, and they kind of do that for most of their lives. For you, why? Like, did you work before you started this, or was it like you moved to Canada and like, I'm going to run a business?
Thank you for having me, first of all. Uh, for me, it wasn't a decision. Well, it happened as a series of events. When I moved to Canada, I did have a job at an marketing agency. It was a US based marketing agency. I really enjoyed working there. There were a bunch of things I learned, and I grew my connections there. But as you know, an agency environment can be really hard and stressful, and you get multiple clients at the same time. And I was so used to working in an in-house environment where you had a marketing department, you were working with different other departments within the organization. I thought, hey, maybe I want to go back to that. And when I put down my papers and I wanted to move back to that role, I saw a bunch of my clients reaching out to me. And they said, hey, you're doing great here. Have you ever thought of starting something of your own? So that was something which put a thought in my mind, and I took that. And also, my dad is an entrepreneur back home in India, and so I discussed that. I tried to have a conversation with different people, sought a lot of through my discussions, heard the pros and cons, understood what can be done. And then I thought, what, let's just do it. Let's see how things go. And so I registered my company, which was pretty simple, and I just started from there. I got a lot of clients through referrals, which was pretty amazing. And that's how the whole journey started. So it wasn't a decision of, oh, I'm coming to Canada and I'm going to open my business. It just happened eventually because of the series of situations, if you will, that I had.
That's pretty interesting. Just curious, like, did you talk to your dad about it before you started your business?
Yes, I did. I basically wanted to understand what running my own business would be like. Like, there are a lot of other things where you will be held responsible and you need to learn a new set of skill set. I've seen throughout my own childhood or journeys him running businesses, so I know, sort of had an idea, which was a completely different business to what I was speaking about. He was into manufacturing and something different. But just the essence of understanding how you do it, you need to have financial knowledge, you need to have operational knowledge, you need to understand not just the sales and marketing bit, because mine is a marketing agency. So I thrive in sales and marketing, but probably not so much on finance and operations and all of those areas. So understanding from him that those are the areas you will have to acquire some kind of knowledge on and seek, that was important and that was helpful. Also, speaking to a bunch of different other people who are running their own businesses, um, it was important to understand, you can't just jump into it. There has to be some kind of research you do, but you can learn things along the way. So
Yeah.
that was a learning.
But so how long had you been in Canada before you started the business?
I was here for a year before I started the business.
And so I'm now it leads me to the question, which is what I'm curious about. So like a year in, and you know how I assume because like back in Nigeria, the way finance is done in Nigeria it's a bit different from how it's done here. There'll be similarities, of course,
Yeah.
but it's a bit different. And so I'm just wondering how you've managed that, like especially in those early days. Like how did you manage, the financial side of things, because then you have to start learning new systems. It's a new culture, it's a new approach.
I think for me, even before I came to Canada, right, I did my research in the sense of understanding what cost of living would look like. Um, and then figuring out how to do, better planning and budget before I land here. So I had a runway of 6 months to a year in case have no job or I have to do, something different. I'm coming here alone. What if there are medical emergencies, etc.? Even though the healthcare, I came on a PR, the healthcare was free. All of that made sense, but it's always good to do a little bit of planning, and it is so important to do that before you come in. So that kind of helped me a lot when I came here to settle down and to find my own place, or uh, you know just to build up your life over here with basic things like furniture and getting a bed and all of that. Like, you need to be prepared with just expenses. And so I think just good planning was what did it for me.
Yeah. But so you can still staying on that topic. And so now, when it comes to running the business itself, you're really good at marketing. That's obvious. But then the other sides of the business, how do you deal with the change? Because I can assume you were learning that it was a new country, you're in a new space. Yes, you had clients, but how do you deal with all those other parts of the business that have to run while you're doing the thing you know how to do well?
I think it's important to ask for help when needed. Reach out to people you think, and that's where I would come into networking. Find people who can help you out. Do that. A lot of it was researching and learning stuff on my own, but at the same time, it was also finding the right people. Especially with finance, I found a really good bookkeeper, a CPA per se, who could sit with me, make me understand what I'm doing is correct or wrong. If why I'm making those decisions. I used to ask a lot of stupid questions, but like someone who's patient enough to walk me through that. While I would also suggest, even if you have a CA or someone who's doing all of that for you, you should always be in the weeds as a founder to understand how things are progressing and what changes need to be done. So it's a lot of learning, I would say. Don't like push that off of those different departments. Keep yourself updated, talk to people who are doing that as experts, try and seek help. Initially, you cannot hire people for those departments because you don't have a lot of money. So think about how you can optimize there. Maybe you hire someone for a few hours, get their expertise, learn how they're doing it, and try to replicate that process. uh, Seek mentors who can help you out in that area. Seek other immigrant founders who have done this before and who can help explain how they have done it. Some of the people I've met through Poach, I've seen a lot of other immigrant founders that I reach out to, and they've been super helpful. They'll be like, "Oh, I did it this way," or "I had help from this person," or "This would cost you lesser if you do this." So all
Hmm.
of those experiences shared help a lot,
Yeah.
through that journey.
Yeah, that's a good point you make, especially about the thing about seeking like mentors or people who understand what you've gone through. Because again, you're an immigrant entrepreneur, so your approach is probably different from someone who's probably spent
Yes.
their life growing up here. Now, kind of just moving on to this point about, if you think about, you've been doing this business for how long now?
It's been 2.5 years.
What has been your biggest challenge so far?
Uh, for me, I feel like my biggest challenge, I wouldn't say finding clients. I get a lot through referrals, etc. Um, it's the pricing point for me. There's a constant challenge of, oh, someone else is offering this at the same price. There's that comparison bit. There are very big agencies already in place who can help out, but they have big budgets. um and so for me, it's that finding the right pricing point, that there's always change, and also making sure that all of the clients needs are addressed through that, and you're not like offering it at a very low price, which I've done in the past already. And the other challenge is finding out that once you have the clients in, right, they want to see immediate results. So I'm paying you today, I want to see so many number of leads within a week, and without really understanding that some marketing aspects take time. It takes you know consistency. It takes the right type of content and story and branding in place. I've seen a lot of my clients who have nothing in place and no one knows who they are. They don't have a story to tell. They're not even finished with their product, or they don't know where it's heading, but they are sure that they want this number of leads for them to sell to. So that is the most difficult part, I feel, during this journey, to explain and to educate and to let them know, this is a process. It has to be, you won't see results immediately. It might be 3 months, 6 months down the line, but you need to be consistent and you need to keep doing that.
How do you deal with that thing about the pricing pointing, and especially considering that you're also competing with bigger agencies, smaller agencies? Are the bigger agencies better priced, or is it that what is the deal with the bigger agencies that makes them such a problem?
I feel like the bigger agencies, especially when I was at a bigger agency, I've known friends who are at a bigger agency. It becomes too transactional for the clients. It becomes too process oriented. No one's thinking out of the box. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is what we're going to do, and this, and these are the number of calls. This is how we're reporting," and done. The personal touch is lost, and that's what we keep hearing back from most of the clients. The other thing from big agencies is, of course, the pricing point. Not a lot of the people who are at a small business, or who are just starting off as themselves, right? Immigrant entrepreneurs, or who are there, want to take the next step to growth, but don't have a huge budget assigned for marketing per se. They have other places where they would be utilizing that budget. So that is another area why they want to seek out maybe a new person who they can, reach out to. The third thing I've seen is they want to not talk to a large set of people, right? When you're with a bigger agency, there's a project manager, there's someone else who's doing paid, there's someone who's doing social, there's a whole team. And oftentimes, what happens is, on the other end, they need to hire someone just to agency manage
Mm,
all of these people. So they would like to just talk to one person, and they know that this person is the one who's doing everything, him or her with two other people, small team. They know they can be interactive, they can reach out. There is no SLA of get back to you within 24 hours. Sometimes it's immediate too. They get responses. It's not very like, oh, I sent a mail, now I'm going to wait 24 to 48 hours to get a response. So stuff like that really is something which I would say very important for certain people. Like, those things matter, and as you are growing your business, it's important for them too.
yeah. You talked about pricing, like people who keep saying, "Oh, it was cheaper here," or "I could get it at this cost from here." How do you handle that? How do you handle that issue when a client says, "Oh no, I could get it for lack of a better example, $10 less if I walked down the road to the other agency down
I
there."
will
How
go
do you deal
for
with that? Ah,
no, I come from a perspective of where I show value add and why we are charging them for what we are charging. Like to break it down into different sub tactics or ways we are approaching things, and why it's, for example, if it's a website development project, it's broken down into, A, it would be strategy, B would be content, C would be design, and D like development, and each of these would cost so and so because so many number of hours goes into it. So giving that, like, essentially that breakdown kind of sometimes helps in those client conversations. Sometimes it's mostly like, uh, many of times I've heard clients say, oh, you charge less, but can you go lesser, because I
mm,
have so and so budget. And sometimes it means you also need to draw a line and go, oh, maybe not, because that would take a lot of time from my end, and I would selling myself low there and not
yeah,
practically not making anything. So it's always a conversation of what value add you bring in and what you're going to do differently, and setting expectations. So those kind of conversations help during a a conversation about money always.
And so moving on to the next this thing is, with all this, like, how do you balance launching your business, managing all that, and also settling into a new country at the same? Like, how do you balance that? Because I feel like it's a ton of work.
For me, because it was already a year that I've been here, uh, I was still a newcomer, but I feel it's easy if, like I said, if you do a lot of research on your end and you figure things out, it's important. I would always encourage people who are coming from a different country to start networking here, join different communities, start interacting with people, asking the right questions, right? There are amazing like Slack channels where you can go and interact with people who have already come here like a few years ago and they know the market. For example, when I was moving here, um, while I was doing a lot of research on Reddit and everywhere else, there was a constant question about, oh, it's going to be difficult to find a place. And you cannot find a place from back home because there are a lot of scams going on. And you might make the payment and everything, and you might end up here, but you probably wouldn't get the place that you need. And so for me, it was getting like directions and almost like a lot of research doing and talking to people online and through community, getting answers to how do I go about it. So I understood that I need to come here, get hold of the right real estate agent, uh, clearly have a budget, communicate that with him, go visit places, and then find a place. It took me like two and a half months to find a place. I was at an Airbnb. A lot of my friends who came in were staying with, say, where like some of them were like, oh, I thought I got a place, but it's a basement somewhere. I didn't know that. It looked different in the pictures and stuff like that. So it's just that knowing and interacting with the right people and understanding where you're going and what the market looks like or what the culture looks like and what the space looks like is very important. And so you can only do that through community, and you can only do that if you make an attempt to find that out and you reach out and have that conversation. No one else is going to do that for you. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, but just curious. Despite all that, like, I wonder if you do all your research, but you still, you know how it is. You read something, you ask questions. It's a bit different from when you now face it in real life. And maybe let me bring it home. Like, what kind of business cultural differences have caught you off guard, especially in the process of doing your business? Like, and how has that shaped how you have moved forward with all you're doing now with your agency?
I think one thing that I've learned about Canada is that it's very diverse from a cultural perspective. So you have people from all over the world coming in. So there's not one thing I can point out and say, oh, this is the culture I've seen in Toronto and that's what's happening. It's a mix of cultures and people react differently. But overall, I would say it's a friendlier environment. People like to help each other out. While there is a distance where in India, you know your neighbor, you have like a sense of community, you've grown up with them, so you can reach out, talk, you know people in that area. Here it's probably you don't even know your neighbors, everyone's like in condos and all of those things, so it's a little harder to make friends and build that network. You have to go out there and do that. It's a little different in India. If you're just part of a place, you have a network, right? But
Yeah,
I'm sure it comes from a place where you're at too, like people in that locality,
yeah,
everyone, you've been here for so many years, so it's easier. Because in Toronto, especially, or cities like in major cities in Canada, people are coming and going, and it's new set of people who are coming each day. So there's a less of more personal interactions, I would say, within your, and you have to make that attempt. You need to know where, say someone's celebrating a festival, or someone, there's a networking event, or there's a dinner happening for some people who are interested in the same thing. Finding those different niches and putting yourself in that situation is very important. The other thing which was a huge bigger for me was from a client perspective, also from a job perspective, is you need to have the you need to again have the right network and referral to do that here. In India, it's different. You can reach out, you can apply for a job, there are a series of interviews. Like, it's good to have a network, but you also find jobs and clients from different sources. Here it is very much important for you to have a good referral, a network for you to find that next client. Or not to say the other methods don't work, they do, like cold outreach or all of those things, but it's just faster if you have all of that in North America, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I think one big lesson I learned when I moved here is that referrals are a big thing.
Yes, yes, it's a big thing here.
It's a big thing. Have you ever tried to apply for funding for your business? Have you ever tried to do any of that?
Luckily, till now, we are a bootstrapped company and we are pretty much using what we have. And I don't want to get into the funding game yet. Not to say that we don't want to grow big, etc. It's just that from my perspective, for a marketing agency at this level, funding is really not a big requirement. It's
Mm.
just how we're going to scale up now and go to the next level and find some foundational things on how we can do things differently. And that's what we are focusing on. Also, right now at this stage, we're not looking for it.
Okay. So since we're talking about funding, so for you, like, what do you think? What are the things that have helped you in your journey so far? Um, Either institutions or programs or communities or support systems that have helped you kind of find your way? Because I think one big thing I get from immigrants when I talk to them is the fact that you're alone or you don't know anyone, and so you just kind of need all those things. And there are a ton of them out there, but not all of them are what they say they are. So people tend to say complain about a couple of people
Mm.
sometimes. But basically, what has been most helpful in just kind of helping you find your way and build a business till date?
I would say my interaction and learning from different immigrant founders, their stories. It could be simple as following them on LinkedIn. Maybe we are connected through a community, say like Coach. That's a big. Or I'm part of other communities too, where there are women entrepreneurs, women immigrant entrepreneurs. Um, and so it could be, say, we met through a networking event where we spoke to each other and I found out that they're an entrepreneur too, they're doing their own thing. We have that discussion. I think those are like different places I seek for, I would say, guidance or information, if you will. The other thing is that you should not limit yourself just because I'm an immigrant entrepreneur, so I'm just going to talk to an immigrant entrepreneur. That's a big thing we do, as I wouldn't say a mistake, but that's how we approach it. And so I don't do that. I try to talk to other entrepreneurs or other founders who have led their businesses into success. Having, like I said earlier on the call, having the right mentors to do that. Reaching out and saying, hey, I'm stuck here. How would you have done it? You don't have to take their advice fully and personally, but like just knowing. When I wanted to, for example, start off my business and I had to register, I was like, oh my God, because in India it's a whole hassle, right? There's paperwork and all of that. And I'm like, what am I going to do about this? But someone within my network who had already started their business was like, hey, reach out to this company called owner.com. They do it all for you for like a brief, like a price. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so when I did that, I found out there are other companies who do that too. And they pretty much take care of the end to end process and they explain everything to you in detail and all of those things. And I'm like, oh, this makes sense, right? So it's within the network finding solutions and going about. Uh, when everyone says, oh, I'm all alone and I feel like I'm doing this on my own, it can seem like that, but I feel like you need to actively reach out. No one's going to know that you're facing a problem unless you reach out and seek for a solution. Often that you won't find the exact solution. Sometimes you might find ways or places to do that. You might find tools to do that, right? In my case, like for this example, someone told me something and I tried to find it and I explored more. So it's that. And I also feel there are many sites from a government perspective too to help too. Seen a lot of agencies from the government side reach out when I open the business saying, hey, we can help you in this place, or we could do this for you all free of cost. Do you need more help? We have a list of so and so things. And I'm like, oh, that's surprising because no one back home has actively done that. And I
Mm.
know for a fact because my father's led multiple businesses, and so no one from the government comes tries to help a small business owner that way. And so it was a surprise at first where I was almost thrown back and I was like, is this a scam? Find out, it's legit. They do that and they try to help you out. And that was another thing. So you're not really alone. You have different tools and places to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I like that point about you're not being you're not really alone. It can feel that way, but I guess the main point there is that you kind of have to step out. Like you have to step out.
Yes, you have to.
You have to step out. If you stay in your bubble, you
Yes.
limit yourselves massively because you're already trying to find your way in the new country. So do you want to make it worse or do you want to make it better?
Yes.
Hmm.
and and you've chosen to come here, right?
Yeah.
That you've taken that step, so you cannot come here and almost complain. You've made the brave decision to come here. Now make that next decision to do that extra added work or effort to make sure that, because you want to run a business at the end of the day and you want to make it successful, so you have to go that extra mile to make that effort to make sure it happens.
Yeah. Everyone says immigrants make great entrepreneurs. Do you feel that way?
I think I think so. I think it depends from person to person. Uh, yes, some of the entrepreneurs I've seen are really immigrants, right? But it depends from person to person. It depends on how they focus on different things, how they perceive it, and how they would like to move forward. Seeing two different people as examples trying to work in the same industry or space, both being immigrants, one is now really successful because every single time it was a struggle. He was like, okay, guys, I can't make it now, but I want to focus on this, I want to do that. The other person was always complaining, and so they're still complaining, to be honest, and they're like, it's not scaling up, what's happening? And I feel like it's a point of view for different people. It comes from a personal perspective of how that person perceives things, right? Do you want to sit back and think everything's going to be handed out to you? No. If you if you make attempts and you try to really drive something from a solution a based approach, rather than, oh, I have a problem at hand, maybe someone's going to come and help out, or rather than seeking that solution out from different sources, sometimes you have to be creative and create your own solution, right?
Yeah.
And so that it's very important to do that, I feel. So i I do see immigrant founders being successful, I do see them not being successful. I think it's different people and how
Yeah.
they are.
Would you do this again with all you know now? Would you do this again? If you had come to Canada, if you came to Canada today, would you start a business in Canada today?
Yeah, in a heartbeat, I would do it again. And
Nice.
I think for me, it's always been, if I make up my mind to something, I'll be like, yes, I'm going to do it. If I'm like full in, I'm full in. And then even if there's failure, there's no turning back. There's always a learning through it. So it's always been that way for me. And so I don't regret or feel like, oh my God, it was so hard. Now what happens is I'm like, oh my God, it was so hard. And now it's so easy. Right? So it's always been like that for me. I almost forget all of those hard times more. Sometimes I get people reminding me of it within my family too. They'll be like, you remember that happened? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I forget very soon.
But I'm just curious, is it that it has gotten easier, or you get used to it? Because I wonder if things really just get easy, or we get used to it. Like you know how we build the muscle
Yeah.
and become so it used to be hard, but now we built the muscle to deal with it, and so we just deal with it, And then people's like, so we now say it's easy, but then if someone went through that and they don't have the muscle, they would say it's hard.
That's true. I think, yeah, that's true. You build sort of your own coping mechanism or your own way of
Yes.
dealing with it, right? So after a while, you're like, yeah, this is going to be this way. How can I look at it differently? Or how can I make this more enjoyable for me? What are different things I can do, right? For example, dread the meeting. I love pitching to my clients. I love all of that. But when it comes to following up on invoices or reaching out to them and saying, oh, this is payment not made, I used to find it so uncomfortable, right? And I used to be like, oh my God. And this was like a conversation always with my CA or bookkeeper, like, you have to do that. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't like it. But then I found a workaround. There are automated messages through different tools that you can set up, which you can click and forget, and it'll send you a notification after, say, a month or two of them not making the invoice payment, which usually does not happen. But like if it's a few days, the tool takes care of it. It sends some emails out to them and notifications. So you're not, I don't like to be put on that spot on drafting that email. Something I need to learn as a founder to do assertively and nicely. But it's nice to know how to work around that. So it was a difficult situation earlier on. I used to stress so much about it, where almost like I was not sleeping at night. I'm like, oh my god, I have to, more than getting the money back, it was like, oh my god, I have to write that email, and I'm spending the whole day thinking about how do I write that, but not sound, awful about it and stuff like. But now it's like, yeah, it's fine, it's part of the game. You tend to learn, and now I'm also learning in a big way on who to work with and who not to work
Mm,
with.
mm,
um, it is completely all right for you when you're having those initial discussions about working together to say, no, I don't think this is going to align with my ways of working. And it's not to say that the other person or company is bad. It's just that you have a different way of working to theirs
mm.
and it might not align. And initially I was like, how do I do that? And I used to take on projects immediately. But now it's like, okay, let's take a step back and just let them know that it's not going to, it's fine. You can part ways on good terms.
The muscle. That's the muscle.
That's the
That's the muscle.
you're building.
That's the muscle. That's the muscle,
Yeah.
actually. You know, believing in yourself more, just kind of saying to yourself
Yeah.
that I deserve better. So we're rounded up now. We're going to do what I call the this or that entrepreneur edition. So you don't need to think too much about it.
Mm.
Work from home or work from office.
Work from home.
Bootstrapping or VC funding.
Strap it.
Networking events or online forums.
Networking events.
Ebooks or paper books.
Paper books. I like the smell.
Me too. Me too.
I love the smell of book.
Podcast or reading.
Podcasts are, sorry, what was the other one?
Podcast or reading a book.
Ooh. Oh, I can't say both, right?
No, this or that.
So I would have gone with reading a book, but off lately it's been podcasts, which I listen to while doing something else. So podcasts.
That's okay. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
You don't like coffee?
I don't think person.
Don't mind me. Industry conferences or intimate mastermind groups?
Intimate mastermind groups.
Yeah.
Like industry conferences, everyone's selling you something.
Yeah. Building from scratch or acquiring an existing business?
Building from scratch.
Interesting. Becoming the face of the brand or keeping a low profile?
Becoming the face of a brand.
Building a sustainable business or chasing rapid scale?
Sustainable business.
I feel like that's making a comeback. I feel like building businesses that are sustainable,
Yes.
lifestyle, that's making a comeback in the world now.
Yes.
Yeah, people are tired of all the scale.
Yeah.
It's like you don't live a life. But thank you. This has been really good talking to you about this. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you for having me. This was really awesome. I love it.
Thank you.